How are you? Bona vesprada a tots i a totes. Bueno, vaig a començar avui en valencià perquè hi ha moltes coses que volia contar-vos. El curs s'està acabant ja, val? Avui tanquem, diríem, el temari, el contingut, question tags, l'últim contingut. Per tant, hem donat tots els continguts que vos fa falta per acabar el nivell B1, per assistir i fer l'examen a l'Escola Oficial d'Idiomes. Per tant, avui acabarem l'explicació. El dimarts que ve farem una review, us donaré un tipus examen, diríem, per a aneu repassant i ficar tot el que hem anat donant en pràctica, el corregirem, l'explicarem i després ficarem data per a ficar un examen. Jo us ho enviaré per mail, tindreu una horeta i mitja com en classe o 2 horetes per a acabar-lo. Intentaré que sigui rellenable, que pugueu fer-lo en l'ordenador mateixa i no ho envieu per mail. Per què? Perquè jo sé, aquesta primera i aquesta segona avaluació, quina persona, quin estudiant aniria bé en un nivell B1. Però clar, ha sigut online. Jo també sé que molta gent no li s'ha de deixar més redaccions, i heu anat fent els deures. Però és una manera també de rebre informació. A més, enguany, com està la quarantena també, volem donar valor a aquesta primera i segona avaluació, l'assistència que heu tingut al curs. Per tant, comptarem l'assistència i aquest 80% d'assistència de la primera i segona avaluació per a certificar d'aprofitament. Però també enguany anem a considerar aquesta quarantena, aquesta feina que heu fet en casa d'una manera especial. Vam decidir que tots els alumnes que tingueu l'assistència coberta i jo veig, per exemple, que han hagut una continuïtat, teniu tots un certificat d'aprofitament. Per a què? Per a que l'any que ve tingueu continuïtat en l'escola, però no vos obligarà a passar al curs següent. Vull dir, una persona que l'examen no li isca molt bé, jo haig vist que estaria millor altra volta fer el B1, aquesta persona també tindrà un certificat d'aprofitament, però amb una recomanació de per a tornar a fer el B1. Però s'apuntareu, tindreu privilegis, tindreu preferència en matricular-se altra volta en el mateix grup. Per tant, aquest certificat d'aprofitament anirà sota la meva recomanació. Torna a fer el B1 o passa al B2-1. Per tant, està molt bé, perquè és un reconeixement a tot el curs, però no vos obliga, si vos doneu el certificat d'aprofitament, a passar de curs. El que fa és vos reserva una plaça, però he de mirar l'assistència de la primera i segona avaluació, veure el test, tot això anem parlant. Això per una banda. Per l'altra banda, enguany no podem tenir sopars de final de curs, ni la revista aquesta que sempre xieu unes fotos, o les redaccions que m'anàveu fent, hi havia gent que ficava el seu nom i el seu cognom en el grup i apareixíeu, no éreu visibles la feina, la tasca que anàveu fent. Mireu el que hem pensat. Tenim un blog en l'escola i ens agradaria que tingueu una redacció ja corregida per vos, no és molta feina. M'ho envieu, el vostre nom, el cognom i el grup per a publicar-ho en un blog. I a més anem a fer fotos de tots els alumnes d'aquest curs de l'Escola d'Adults de nosaltres com a recordatori del que hem passat. Simplement m'heu d'enviar per correu una foto en vertical, una foto de cada alumne en vertical. M'heu feu arribar al mail. O si tota la classe volguereu organitzar-se, Marcela, perdona, si tots poden enviar de tu la foto de cadascú, de cada alumne, i tu m'ho fas arribar a mi de la millor manera que ho pugueu parlar. Per favor, animeu-se, que com estem passant una situació tan diferent, tan especial, volem donar una sonrisa a aquest moment. And now, let's start. The last unit of the course. A murderer. What is a murder? Asesinato. Then, a very famous murderer in England. Jack the Ripper. Jack el Destripador. Are you ready? Then check your books. Unit 10B, the murderer. Come on, let's start. And here we have the last unit. Page everybody 166, 166, 10B, the last unit of the course, and the title is and the murderer is murder, asesinato, the murderer, el asesino. Well, today we're going to deal with crime vocabulary relacionat amb crime, yeah? And the first question says, have you heard of Jack the Ripper? ¿Saps algo? ¿Has escoltat de Jack el Destripador? A very famous murderer? Yeah? I think that everybody. But do you know that nobody knows who the real person was behind these murders? They don't know the murderer. Well, here then it is the greatest unsolved crime. Es el crimen, el gran crimen por resolver, ¿no? Then here you have vocabulary regarding crime. Here, repeat with me: detectives, evidence, murder, murderer, proof, solve, suspect, victims, witnesses. Witnesses, testigos. And here you have definitions, and you have the words, and you have to match each definition with each word, each vocabulary. I'm going to read, and you have to write each noun in each definition. Number one, it's a noun. Police officers who investigate crimes. 2. People who see something which has happened and then tell others, tell the police about it. 3. People who are hurt or killed by somebody in a crime. 4. A person who kills another person deliberatamente. 5. The crime of killing a person illegally and deliberately. 6. The facts, signs, which tell you who committed the crime. And number 7, people who are thought to be guilty of a crime. La gente que se piensa que son culpables, guilty. You can be guilty or innocent. Number 8, a mystery, a verb. To find the correct answer to why something happened. Number 9, something, yeah? It's a verb. To use facts and evidence to show something is true. Then please, now, pause the video, pareu el video, do it at home, lo feu en casa, because after a minute we are going to correct. Are you ready? Well, we're going to correct, finished? Yeah, well, police officers who investigate crimes are called detectives. Very good. Number 2, people who see something which has happened and then tell others. Witnesses, yeah, es testigos. Witnesses, yeah. Number 3, let's see. People who are hurt or killed by somebody in a crime are the victims. Very good. Number 4, A person who kills another person deliberately is a murderer. Number 5. The crime of killing a person illegally and deliberately, a murder. Number 6. Let's say the facts, signs which tell you who committed the crime is the evidence. Yeah? There is no evidence or a clear evidence. Let's see number 7. People who are thought to be guilty for crime are the, very good, suspects. Number 8. A verb. To find the correct answer, why happened? To solve a crime, resolver un problema, to solve the crime, yeah, to solve, resolver. Number 9, the last verb, to use facts and evidence to show something is true, is to prove, probar algo, to prove. That was, then we have detectives, witnesses, victims, murderer, martyr, evidence, suspects, to solve a crime, and to prove or not evidence. Is it clear? Was it right? Now we are going to play as if we were police officers or detectives. Ready? Yeah, everybody. We're going to read the article and find the answer to these questions. Number 1. Where and when did the murders take place? ¿Dónde y cuándo tuvieron lugar, take place, the murders? 2. How many murders were there? ¿Cuántos asesinatos? 3. How long did the murders go on for? ¿Cuántos tiempo duraron? And 4. What kind of people have been suspects? ¿Cuánta gente ha sido sospechosa? But what's the problem? That in your reading comprehension, we don't have certain words. Falta vocabulary. Then, which vocabulary I'm going to use in order to fill in the gaps and complete the text reading? Very good. You have to take this vocabulary and fill in the gaps, omplires buits, el text, omplirlo, omplires buits and estes paraules. Then, I'm going to let you time. Pause the video, pareu el video, do it on your own, do it at home, because after a minute we are going to correct. I'm going to read it aloud if you want. One of the greatest unsolved murder mysteries of all time is that of Jack the Ripper. In the autumn of 1888, a brutal walked dark, foggy streets of Whitechapel in East London, terrorizing the inhabitants of the city. They were all women, and the police seemed powerless to stop the murders. There were no to the crimes, so the police had no idea what the murderer looked like. Panic and fear among Londoners were increased by a letter sent to Scotland Yard by the murderer. In the letter, he made fun of the police's attempts to catch him and promised to kill again. It finished. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. This was the first of many letters sent to the police. The murders continued, 5 in total. But in November, they suddenly stopped 3 months after they had first begun. Jack the Ripper was never caught, and for more than a century, historians, writers, and have examined and tried to discover his identity. Hundreds of articles and books have been written and many films made about the murders. But the question, who was Jack the Ripper, has remained unanswered. There have been plenty of, including a doctor, a businessman, a painter, a sailor, a singer, and even a member of the royal family. And all sorts of people over the years have tried to this real-life murder mystery. So, fill in the gaps, because we are going to correct. Ready, steady, go. Here you have the answers, yeah? A brutal murderer walked the dark, foggy streets. The victims were all women. There were no witnesses to the crime. Historians, writers, and detectives have examined the evidence and tried to discover and prove his identity. There have been plenty of suspects, including a doctor, a businessman, a painter, and even a member of the royal family, have tried to solve this real-life murder mystery. Did you do it right, both of them? This vocabulary into context. So, this is the reading comprehension. Then, after the reading comprehension, we are going to answer the questions. Then, number 1. Where and when did the murders take place? In London, yeah. Well, autumn, year 1888. Very good. How many murders? How many of them? ¿Cuántos asesinatos? Very good. 5 murders, yeah. And how long did the murders go on for? Durant quant de temps duraren? Yeah, for 3 months. And suddenly they stopped. Very strange. And what kind of people have been suspects? Doctors? Businessman? Painter? A painter? A member of the royal family? A singer? A sailor? And so on. Then all of them were suspects, but they haven't been able to prove it. Then these were the answers, yeah, and this was the story. So now we're going to listen to some people who have been investigating about Jack the Ripper. Ready for the listening? Yeah? Then everybody have a look at 10.7 listening. 10.7 listening. I think it's in your page 167. Yeah? Then listen to part 1 of an interview with a retired police inspector who is an expert on Jack the Ripper. Tell me, who is Jan Bondison's suspect? Then, according to this inspector, segons este inspector, who is his main suspect? ¿Quién es el principal sospitoso? Then write 1 in the box and complete his occupation. Then this is the inspector, Jan Bondison. Then we have Bruce Robinson and we have Patricia Conway. Then suspects. Walter Sickert. Then you have to write the numbers according to who is the most suspect. And here A, you have to write what do they do, what's their job, quina occupation, quina és la feina de cadascú, qui era un navegante, qui era un businessman, qui era el sospitós de la família real. Then you have to write their occupation. Then we have Walter Sickert, we have Hendrik de Jong, and Michael Maypick. Are you ready? Yeah.
.7 Part 1. Good morning, and thank you for coming, Mr. Morton. Or should it be Inspector Morton? You were a detective with Scotland Yard, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. For 25 years. I retired last year.
People today are still fascinated by the identity of Jack the Ripper, over 130 years after the crimes were committed. It's incredible, isn't it?
Well, it's not really that surprising. People are always interested in unsolved murders, and Jack the Ripper has become a sort of cult horror figure.
So, what can you tell us about some of the new theories about his identity?
Well, a recent new theory was put forward by a crime historian called Jan Bondison. He thinks that Jack the Ripper was a Dutch sailor called Hendrik de Jong.
What evidence does he have?
Well, de Jong was definitely a murderer. He killed 4 women in Holland and Belgium, including 2 of his ex-wives. He also travelled to London a lot, and he was there when the Jack the Ripper murders took place. He also matches the descriptions we have of Jack the Ripper.
How credible is his theory?
Well, even Dr. Bondison says that it's impossible to know for certain if de Jong was Jack the Ripper. I would say it's possible, but there isn't really enough conclusive evidence.
Well, then the different suspects, this is number 1, Jan Bondison's main suspect, and Henry de Jong was a sailor, and he was at the time of the murderers were committed. Yeah, and we also have, yeah, we are going to talk about Walter Sickert and Michael Maypick. Then here you have. Listen again and make notes about Jan Bondison's theory in the third. Then we have Jan, we have Rose, and we have Patricia Cornwell. Then, what evidence there is? Then what do they say? What Inspector Morton thinks? Yeah, about this. Then we are going to set up the evidence. For example, the evidence for being number 1, the sailor Hendrik de Jong. He says, for example, that he had a story of violence against women, and he had violence against women, and he also was in London, yeah, at the time. He was in London at that time. And he matched the descriptions. Yeah, he looked like the description of the people. Yeah, looked like. Then, what? Oh my God! What's here? You don't have to be here. You have to be here. It's a nightmare. This. Yeah. Well, what Inspector thinks about being this? What does he say? about Jan, what does Inspector Myrtle says? Thinks that he could be the murderer, yeah? Thinks that he could be, but there is no evidence. Non había evidencia. There is no evidence. No evidence. No enough evidence. Not enough evidence, yeah? Then, this is about this one. You understand? What are we going to do now? Now, this is Jan. Then, Jan Pollison's main suspect is number 1, Henry de Jong, a sailor. What's the evidence? You have to write here, yeah? In your book, you have to write here what evidence there is. Well, he had a lot of violence against women, and he was in London at that time and looked like the descriptions. But Inspector Morton thinks that he could be, but there is no proof. There is no enough evidence. Now, the second inspector, the second person who investigated was Bruce Robinson. Now, it's number 2, then you have to decide. According to Bruce Robinson, who was the main suspect? Walter Sickert or Michael May? Number 2. And you have to write down what does each person do, what did each person do, la feina de cadascú, and after that, Patricia Caldwell. According to Patricia, who was the main suspect. Then, you can pause the video después para el vídeo, escoltar los legales que pasa falta, because you have to complete, according to Bruce, what's the evidence and what does Inspector Morton think, and according to Patricia, what the evidence for her suspect and what Inspector Morton thinks about that. Are you ready? Okay.
.8 Part 2. The next recent theory I'm interested in comes from the film director Bruce Robinson, who wrote a book in 2016 called They All Love Jack. What can you tell us about it?
Bruce Robinson is convinced that Jack the Ripper was in fact Michael Maybrick, the brother of one of the original suspects, James Maybrick. He thinks that the style of the murders indicates that there was a connection with the Freemasons, which both brothers were.
What did Michael do?
He was a popular singer and composer of songs at the time, and Robinson thinks that the Ripper's letters are similar in style to some of his songs, and the fact that they were posted from so many different parts of the UK makes sense because Michael was on tour at the time. Robinson thinks he was a psychopath and was responsible for at least 16 more murders that took place in England later. He even thinks that Michael went on to murder his brother James.
But he was never arrested, was he?
No, he wasn't. However, Bruce thinks that by 1893 the police had begun to suspect him, but because many of the police themselves were Freemasons, they allowed him to escape to the Isle of Wight, where he lived for the rest of his life.
And what do you think?
I think the book is well researched, but I don't really believe his conspiracy theory, that the police knew it was Michael and let him get away. I think the reason the Ripper was never caught was because the police were incompetent, not corrupt.
Oh my God. Well, listen again if you have any doubt. But according to Bruce Robinson, the film director, he showed that Jack the Ripper was Michael Maybrick and he was a musician. Yeah? Now, if you want, you can listen to it again and fill in the gap about, according to Bruce, what the evidence was and what Inspector thinks. But Bruce says that the evidence is that the letters that Jack the Ripper sent, the letters had the same style as the songs that he composed. You understand? Then the letters that Jack the Ripper sent to Scotland Yard had the same style as the lyrics could be, the lyrics of his song, okay, the same style as his songs, because he was a composer, yeah. Well, very good. And now here you have to be here. This is a nightmare, yeah. Well, and now what Inspector sorry, and at that time that it was being happening, yeah, at that time he was on a tour, estaba de tour allí. Then we could say this. He was on a tour there in the UK. Then here you have to write, and he was on a tour, yeah? And he was on a tour. Very good. But Inspector Morton thinks, what does he think? That it's for a book, but not reality. Then he doesn't believe that story. Then he doesn't believe that story. So the third one, Patricia Cornwell. Then it's normal. Patricia Cornwell thinks that her main suspect is Walter Sickert. Then number 3, Walter Sickert, according to Patricia Cornwell. But you have now to tell me what was his job, what was his occupation, quina feina tenía, and what the evidence there is for Patricia, and what does Inspector Morton think.
(10.9) Part 3. Finally, let's talk about Patricia Cornwell's research. In her 2002 book Jack the Ripper, Case Closed, she said that she had identified the murderer and that she was convinced that Jack the Ripper was in fact Walter Sickert, the painter. What evidence did she put forward to support this claim?
Well, she mainly used DNA analysis. She actually spent over £2 million buying 32 paintings by Sickert. She cut up one of them to get the DNA from it. People in the art world were furious.
I can imagine.
And then she compared the DNA from the painting with DNA taken from the letters that Jack the Ripper sent to the police. Patricia Cornwell said that she was 99% certain that Walter Sickert was Jack the Ripper.
And now she's written a new book with more evidence.
Yes, it's called Ripper, The Secret Life of Walter Sickert. She says she's found new evidence, including letters which were written by Jack the Ripper and by Walter Sickert on the same very unusual type of paper. She also points out that some of his paintings are very violent and frightening.
But you don't think she's right, do you?
Well, I think she might be right. She has a lot of evidence, although I don't think it's completely reliable, and a lot of people think she's wrong.
So, who do you think the murderer was?
I can't tell you, because I don't know.
Do you think we'll ever solve the mystery?
Yes, I think one day the mystery will be solved. Some new evidence will appear that proves 100% who Jack the Ripper was, and we'll be able to say that the case is finally closed. But at the moment, it's still a mystery, and people like a good mystery.
So, very interesting, yeah? Then Patricia Cornwell says that the evidence has DNA evidence, ADN, that is more scientific. He took some DNA from his painting. Ell era un pintor famós, per tant, de les pintures, he took out some paintings, from the paintings some DNA, and compared with the letters, yeah? And she was 90% sure. And Inspector Martin thinks that, well, she might be right, but he doesn't know who the murderer, who Jack the Ripper was. So, this is Inspector, and what do inspectors do? ¿Qué fan los inspectors? Checking. They are checking for questions. Then it says, let's move on grammar question tags. Look at 4 questions from the interview and complete the gaps. We're going to listen. I don't know if I have the listening. Yeah, I have the listening.
10.10 1.
You were a detective with Scotland Yard, weren't you?
When you
2.
It's incredible, isn't it?
3.
But he was never arrested, was he?
4.
But you don't think she's right, do you?
well, these questions or these sentences appeared in the interview, and they are made in order to check for information, ¿vale? Para comprobar la información. Mire, number 1, you were a detective with Scotland Yard. Tú vas a ser un detective en Scotland Yard. Veritat. When you. Eso es increíble, ¿verdad? It's incredible, isn't it? But he was never arrested, was he? 4. But you don't think she's right, do you? When we don't know, or when we know but we want to reassure, volem assegurar-nos de algo, o no sabem i volem enfatitzar en la comprovació, utilitzem question tags. Superfàcils, mireu. You were està en afirmativa, ho veureu? És un auxiliar, el verb to be que se pot negar per ell mateixa. Quan te fica una afirmativa, fas la question tag, l'auxiliar en negativa i una inversion del subject. You were a detective when you. It's incredible, tenim una afirmativa del verb to be, l'afirmativa passarà a negativa. Isn't it? I una inversion, l'auxiliar en negativa i el subject. 3. But he was never arrested. És que es posarà en negativa perquè està el never. Està en negativa, per tant fem una inversion. L'auxiliar was en afirmativa. Okay? But you don't think she's right. Tenim així un presente simple en negativa. Per tant, l'auxiliar he de passar l'afirmativa. Do you? This is question tags. Yeah? And we're going, before going to Grammar Bank on page 223, abans de passar al vostre llibre a la pàgina 223, vos he preparat una coseta. Pay attention. I'm now a detective. I'm now an inspector. Soc una inspectora. Are you ready? Pay attention. Let me ask you some questions. Inspector Sonia, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to interview some of my students. Are you ready? I'm going to look at you face to face. Voy a mirar-vos cara a cara. ¿Vale? I'm going to interview my students. Elena. Elena, are you there? Yes. You work in Lear, don't you? Monica, you love payas, don't you? Sabrina, you have 2 children, don't you? Concha, you visited Dublin, didn't you? Anna, you are a psychologist, aren't you? Pepe, you worked in a bank, didn't you? Felix, you were an architect, weren't you? Ho vegeu? Presente simple afirmativa, la question tag he de fer l'auxiliar en negativa. Don't you? Presente simple afirmativa, you love, la question tag en negativa en l'auxiliar. Don't you? Presente simple have, negativa, don't you, en inversion. Visited és passat en afirmativa, he de fer la question tag en l'auxiliar en negativa, de passat, didn't, és el subjecte. El verb to be en afirmativa, he de fer la negativa i la inversion. Worked està en passat, l'auxiliar és did, però en negativa, didn't i subjecte. Queda clar? Yes? Well, now I'm going to explain to you further information. Question tags. This is by Christina Cabal. I love her blog. Then I reproduce what she said. Question tags. Question tags are small questions we produce at the end of sentences when we speak. És per a comprovar veritat. They are used to ask for confirmation of something we are not sure about or to ask for agreement. It wasn't a very good party, was it? Wasn't està en negativa, has de passar-la a afirmativa, és el subjecte. For example, a positive sentence, it was a good party, Martin passed all his exams, passa a una negative tag, l'auxiliar en negativa. Wasn't it? Martin passed, didn't he? For example, he is married. El verb to be se pone a per mateixa. Isn't he? They are singing now, aren't they? Mary was ill, wasn't she? You have passed, haven't you? Your son ran a marathon, didn't he? Peter will come, won't he? Vegeu que l'auxiliar el fa en negativa. L'auxiliar en negativa. L'auxiliar en negativa. L'auxiliar en negativa. Use the contracted form. Or another possibility, if the sentence is in negative, si l'oració està en negativa, tu fas la question tag en positiva. It wasn't a good party, was it? Martin didn't pass all his exams, did he? For example, you aren't 18, are you? You weren't studying, were they? They weren't, studying, were they? My dog hasn't been eating, has he? You couldn't do it, could you? You didn't do it, did she? Linda didn't do it, did she? The boys can't see it, can they? He doesn't speak Chinese, does he? Use a pronoun to replace the noun or the noun phrase. Si fica Martin, no diga did Martin, is did he? No? You have to use the pronoun. Is it clear? Doncs quan l'oració siga en afirmativa, tu la question tag en negativa, utilitzant l'auxiliar de cada temps verbal. Tu fiques en negativa, tu fas en afirmativa. Una inversion. Auxiliar más sujeto. Clear? Intonation. Depèn de la entonació, fas la question tag per a una diferent intenció. Falling intonation, cap a baix, és perquè tu estàs segura de la resposta, però vols com si la persona estigués d'acord amb tu. For example, jo sé que esteu tots ahí seguint la classe. ¿Vale? You are listening to me. Are you? And you. Si va cap a dalt, rising intonation, és que realment no ho sabem. ¿Vale? You are happy. And you? And you? ¿Vale? Per tant, depèn de l'entonació, canvia el significat, el purpose, ¿vale? El propòsit de fer la question track. Clear? Well, after the explanation, now it's time in your box to embed the last content question tracks. And here you have the same explanation. Then everybody please, the grammar blank is on page 223. Everybody, question tag. Vale? Esteu ahí tots? I'm going to disappear because you are now the main characters. After the explanation, 223 grammar bank, you have these exercises. Match the question halves. Teniu ahí les qüestions, les afirmatives o negatives, i heu de fer un matching, heu de pensar quina és la question tag correcta per a cada oració. Per exemple, you know that man. Tu coneixes a aquest home, veritat? És la you. Don't you? Per què? Perquè you know és present simple. L'auxiliar, si és afirmativa, és do. Per tant, la question tag he de fer-la negativa. You know that man és afirmativa del present simple, la question tag he de fer-la negativa, l'auxiliar és don't, més el subjecte you. A veure què més tenim ahí. 1. You are going out with him. You haven't told your family about him. You met him last month. You were at the same party. You didn't know he was a criminal. You aren't happy in the relationship. You never want to see him again. You'll tell us the truth. You won't tell any lies. You understand what I'm saying. Then now please pause the video, pareu el vídeo, do it at home, o feu en casa, and then restart because we'll correct. Ready to correct? Well, you are going out with him. Què no heu ficat? És un verbo to be, és una afirmativa, busco la negativa. Muy bien. And you. You are going, and you. Negativa. Molt bé. Number 2. You haven't told your family about him. És una negativa i és un present perfect. Buscaré una afirmativa. You haven't told your family about him. Very good. Have you? Very good. Number 3. You met him last month. Afirmativa, ja estem en passat. Molt bé. Negativa, en passat. Didn't you? Very good. 4. You were at the same party. És passat. Afirmativa en el verb to be. Me farà falta una negativa. When you. Or F. So here I wrote it down, but I didn't write the letter. Yeah. Let's see number 5. You didn't know he was a criminal. Pasado. Negativa. Me fará falta en afirmativa. Z. Did you? 6. You aren't happy in the relationship. Verb to be en negativa. Me fará falta el verb to be en afirmativa. H. Are you? Let's say number 8. Number 7, sorry. You never want to see him again. Es present simple, pero cuidado en el never. El never siempre tiene un sentido negativo, es como si fuera la negativa. Por lo tanto, tengo que buscar una afirmativa. You never want, then presente simple, don't you, perquè never és com si fos una negativa. Number 8. You'll tell us the truth. Es contaràs la veritat. Afirmativa, en el futur will més infinitiu, buscaré una negativa. You'll tell us the truth. Won't you? D. D. Won't you? Segur, veritat. Very good. Number 9 is future in negative. You won't tell any lies. Then I need affirmative with will. Will you? B. And number 10, you understand what I'm saying. Present simple, affirmative, buscaré una negativa. Oops, negativa. Don't you? J. Entonces, ¿en quina m'enganya jo? En la 7. Ah, que és negativa. Mira, diguem poseu. Això és negativa, perdoneu. I he de fer-la afirmativa. Diguem poseu, però no ho he fet. Very good. Clear? Ho teniu bé? Yeah? Well, now it's your turn to write it down. Now you have to decide which question tag. For example, let's say, your name's Jack, isn't it? Verbo to be in afirmativa, negativa, isn't it, perquè me referisc al no. Then you have to read, focus on the verbal tense, if it's affirmative or negative, and do the question tag orderly. Number 1, for example, your brother works at the police station. Afirmativa y presente simple. 2, they don't have any proof. Negativa, present simple. That man isn't the murderer. You were a witness to the crime. The police have arrested someone. Present perfect. The woman wasn't dead. That girl took your handbag. Passat. You won't go to prison. Future. You haven't seen the suspect. Present perfect. They couldn't find enough evidence. Simple past, but with the verb could. Then pause the video, pareu el vídeo, ho feu en casa i ara corregiré. Ready? Steady. Go. Number 1. Your brother works at the police station. Presente simple, afirmativa, buscar una negativa. Doesn't he? Well, doesn't he? Then, they don't have any proof. Negative, present simple. Then I need affirmative. They don't have any proof. Do they? Yeah, do they? Well, number 3. That man isn't the murderer. Negativa, verbo to be, nos falta una afirmativa. Is he? Number 4. You were a witness to the crime. Weren't you? Very good. The police have arrested, present perfect, have arrested someone. Then, affirmative, I need a negative. Haven't they, the police, yeah? The woman wasn't dead. The woman wasn't dead. is the present. It's the simple past of verb to be. Negative, I need affirmative. Was she? Number 7. That girl took your handbag. Then I need past in negative. Didn't she? Then let's say the next. Oh my god, now they won't hear. Let's go on. Yeah, I'm going to write it here. And let's see, that girl took your handbag. Yeah, it's past. So, what do you think it's going? Number 8, let's see. Yeah, number 8. He won't go to prison. It's future with will. Negative, then he won't go to prison. Will he? Yeah. Number 9. Number 9. Well, I'm going to follow here, but because I don't know, it doesn't work. Number 9. You haven't seen the suspect. Present perfect. In negative, then I need affirmative. Have you? And the next, the last one, number 10. Let's see. They couldn't find any evidence. It's could, negative, then I need affirmative. Could they? Yeah, it's very clear. Then your brother works, doesn't he? They don't have any proof, do they? That man isn't the murderer, is he? You were a witness. When you? The police have arrested someone, haven't they? The woman wasn't dead, was she? That girl took your handbag, didn't she? He won't go to prison, will he? You haven't seen the suspect, have you? And they couldn't find enough evidence, could they? How was it? It's a very easy grammatical point. The most difficult is to use it. We have to try to use it en intentar utilizarlo. So we finish here with the question tag. We have been inspectors, yeah, and I'm going to tell you what to do. Now, here am I. Hello. Now I'm going to send you a grammatical point, yeah, reviewing question tags. But please, could you start reviewing, trying to review, yeah, vocabulary and grammar, because we have finished the contents and it's time to start reviewing. And please, any question you could send me by mail, you can ask me the question, but remember, we need to meet at Google Meet, Zoom or Hangouts to see each other and talk about the course. Remember, send me the writings you want to be published and send your photo, yeah, vertical, in vertical, and down, yeah. And if you want, please talk about that. It's once in a lifetime. If you want to send all the photos to Marcela, I have to ask you for permission, Marcela, and then send me to me. Is it clear? Well, happy weekend and see you next Tuesday. Bye bye.